This is the life. Yo, Bonehead, how you doing? Oh, it's the new guy. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be working on your video game stuff. Yeah, no. You guys are going on the beach, and I figured, hey, I like to tan. Can you even tan? You got no skin, says the ghost with a floating skull. Touché, but that does not answer my question. Well, I was surfing the internet looking at game stuff, and I found this little video about Splatoon. Oh, really? Wait, if you're telling me this, then... Oh, alright. Who's it from? Oh, I think you know who it is. Wait. No. Yep. You son of a... Stupid trash can. Blah blah blah, insert snappy comment of how I'm covering game theory again. Yeah! Inklings! I want to say that I am glad that MatPat actually went back to science with his videos, which is, you know, something I actually like about him. But unfortunately, this video left a very sour taste in my mouth. You don't even have a mouth. Shut up, you trash can! Now, before we begin, there's one point I need to address about the video.
But anyway, today's episode is a science-based one and has absolutely nothing to do with lore, so let me give you the short version of the story for those of you who haven't played it.
Now, as I stated before, I actually like it when MatPat goes into more scientific analysis of video games, but the fact of the matter is that you're ignoring lore in a video game like this is actually kind of detrimental. Not only for the fact that you actually bring up gameplay aspects which are completely tied into lore, as in the fact that, you know, the Inklings can transform into kid and squid forms at will when they reach 14, which is heavily tied in not only to the gameplay but into the lore. You can't exactly ignore it. Now, I realize that MatPat says this is purely a scientific episode, ignoring the lore of Splatoon, which is actually pretty damning considering a few of his claims. For example...
I'm here today to answer the rhetorical question Nintendo never thought would be answered. Are the Inklings biologically more of a kid or more of a squid?
The answer to that question is in the single-player missions of the game, as well as promo materials that were made for the game's initial run. The fact that MatPat goes out of his way to completely ignore the lore of the games, to go for a more scientific run, gives me the vibe that he never really touched the game up to this point. Also, before we continue, we need to talk about one more thing that MatPat seems to take out of context.
Cephalopods being squid, cuttlefish, and octopodes. And yes, Internet, you heard that right. The official plural version of octopus is octopodes.
Octopodes, which is pretty rare and appears only in British English.
Do you even dictionary, bro?
Such a tasty ego. I love it, I really do. Since you completely gloss over the fact that the video that you actually referenced to and that you actually put this in...
Well, what does this mean for you? If you say octopuses, you can continue to do so without fearing you're an ignorant slob. If you say octopi, you can continue to do so, but realize you have no grounds to tell people who say octopuses that they are ignorant slobs. And if you say octopodes, you'd better be prepared to deliver this spiel at a moment's notice and in a British accent.
Let's see those acting skills, MatPat! I want to see you make the Queen of England blush with an attempted British accent. Didn't you try that once and it backfired on you? Shut up!
If you look at the mechanics of the game and a little bit of science, it is clear that the Inklings are actually way more of one than the other. Oh, so much more.
And this is where I had to ask a very deep question. If you're looking at the mechanics of the game, why is the lore thrown out? Especially since it's a means that can actually prove you're completely right in this case, especially with your scientific evidence to back it up. Sure, you can still do the science methodology, and that's something that I really used to like about game theory, but you can make 1,000 theories and bring in as many real-world facts as you want, but it wouldn't matter if the game's lore went completely against that.
Off here, there are some easy things that we can just cross off by looking at game models. For example, although Inklings walk upright on land, we also see them totally melt into the ground for fast travel and recharging ink. This actually says a lot about their structural anatomy. While the Inklings definitely need to be able to support activities like running and shooting an ink gun, they're likely doing it with almost zero actual bones. This puts a solid point in the squid column. When sprayed across the playing field every time you get rollered, there's not all that much other than a whole lot of fluid in there. If that's the...
Not going to disagree, but tell me, MatPat, when was the last time a squid could transform into a human? Especially in the amount of time that it takes to transform in the game? And again, you know what would have actually proven you right? the game's lore, since there's actually items you can collect called the Sunken Scrolls, one of which being an X-ray of the Inkling, revealing that they don't have bone structure and have more anatomy of that of squids. Now I'm going to do something I don't normally do in these sorts of things, as I've already said, and I'm going to jump a bit around. Since I want to point out that throughout the entire video, MatPat's been giving a scorecard for the kid and squid portions.
However, another point for kid is that land dwellers need a lot of special features, like for instance, eyeballs.
And after this point in the video, he doesn't really go back to his list. He brings up the eyes, and while he doesn't give it, coupled with the next segment that he goes into brain activity, and that it can go either way.
The point is, even though you think intelligence would be an easy win for the kid column here, the ways we see Inklings acting in the game leaves the possibility of it going either way.
Since after this segment he goes into the RNA portion, so one can assume that the point system would be at the same, since it'd be 2 points for kids and 1 for squids. Yet when we get to the RNA segment, he automatically declares the Inklings to be squids. Putting aside the fact that the game tells you outright that they are squids, what was the point of having all this in the scoreboard? In all honesty, and at best, the stuff you bring up makes this a tie! Why? Why even have a scoreboard mechanic in the entire video if you're just going to throw it out and ignore everything else you've brought up just for this single point, which makes it a tie?
Inklings, their funny sneakers, or even their weird suction cup hair/ears.
Alright, consider this a nitpick, but ears? You do realize that in the same picture you've got on screen, the Inkling does have ears, right? Nope, sorry! I have to give this context first.
Long time. It involves slow Darwinian selection. Little tiny survival advantages happening over thousands of generations. Unless, of course, it doesn't. Unless you happen to be one of the very few species that has the ability to forget Darwin altogether and evolve at your own pace. Humans are humans, and we're stuck as humans. The chances of us having some bizarre new species-changing evolution are incredibly slim. But squids, on the other hand, are playing by a completely different set of genetic rules. Just this year, in fact, just a couple weeks ago as we researched this episode, scientists discovered that cephalopods don't follow the normal patterns of protein building with RNA, at least not as strictly as we do.
Alright, you can consider this interjection more of a bookmark, since I want to point out that this article, MatPat is mostly focusing on the headlines. Why do I want you to remember this? Because I actually read that article, and I'll explain more on my point when we get to that in my next interjection.
This may seem like a small difference, but it completely changes the way cephalopods live, breed, and most importantly, evolve. Normally, these kinds of changes would have to be slowly passed down through generation after generation, but RNA editing allows cephalopods like squids to completely skip all that noise. It also puts them as one of the only species to be able to make rapid enough adaptations that you would need to survive a post-apocalyptic world in just a few generations, rather than millions of years. Sad as it is.
Except, no, MatPat, I like it when you do scientific stuff. I really do. Except, now I have to say you really haven't changed from your previous ways, especially from your previous videos. The only difference is instead of turning one of my favorite video game characters into a villain, you're misleading your audience by completely foregoing information from the same source that you're using to back up your points. And I quote, "When the scientists studied octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish, they found that these species had retained those vast swaths of genetic information at the expense of making the small changes that felicitate evolution."
Very few species that has the ability to forget Darwin altogether and evolve at your own pace.
In layman's terms, these creatures' genes barely change as they get passed down from generation to generation, meaning that the DNA mutations that are needed to evolution is limited and actually slows down their evolutionary process. So following your reference, these squids wouldn't be able to evolve in the short amount of time between that they crawled on the land and the events of the game Splatoon, which would be about 2,000 years. And in case you think that this is the only article that goes for this, I found an article that was listed on the same day that says this in it, and I'll link it in the description below. Once again, RNA editing may allow them to create new proteins, but that doesn't mean they get to evolve quickly. And for the love of Holy Cthulhu, do you not understand the basics of evolution and basic reading? I swear, MatPat! I swear! Oh, you really shouldn't swear. I mean, your mom might be watching. So I guess that means it's my turn to do final thoughts. Ooh, I've always wanted to do one of these. Well, yeah, MatPat, this was bad. In a sense, I mean, I learned more about RNA editing from you, but at the same time, I mean, this is bad, and I mean, really bad. I mean, I'm not foaming at the mouth like Skull is. Wow, he doesn't even have a mouth. How's that even possible? Well, anyway, this was a bad video. I mean, from the fact that MatPat completely ignores the lore of the game yet is willing to use gameplay to help prove his point, to the fact that he couldn't be bothered to read the articles he used to help prove his theory. So, yeah, Skull's being committed, so how does he usually end these things?
Oh, he usually gets stopped by me.
Huh. Talking Space Goat. Neat!